Welcome to Seek Reality with your host, Roberta Grimes. Author and attorney Roberta Grimes will explore and illustrate how she, after an extraordinary experience of light in childhood, has discovered channels of communication to the afterlife and how these implications have an effect on our everyday lives. Please welcome the host of Seek Reality, Roberta Grimes.
Hello, dear friends. As you know, this is Seek Reality. This is Roberta Grimes, and we're going to have fun today, as we always do. Now, as you may know, we don't do much on Seek Reality with near-death experiences, or what we call NDEs for short. And the reason is simple. Those that we used to think were dead, who tend to be the real experts, of course, consistently tell us that people who return from an NDE never actually have gone to the places where the dead routinely are. Instead, they go to places in the endless astral planes where they meet with dead people, and it looks like the afterlife. It's just not quite the same. And so I, of course, faithfully follow what they say. The trouble is, it makes a lot of people angry when I do. These experiences are generally based on what's in people's minds. People go to places that look like something that is important to them. That's why they're so different. Some of them were religious. Some of them, are very spiritual. Some are not. There are people even who go to a fictitious hell during an NDE or have very negative experiences if their guides thinks that's what they need. But NDEs are very important. They're a form of dramatic, extraordinary, and extreme out-of-body experience. But if Raymond Moody hadn't given them the title of near-death experiences and associated them with death way back in 1965, I don't think we would associate them with death at all. I don't mean to say anything negative about them. I'm so thrilled we have them because they're dramatic, they're life-transforming, and they're so extraordinary that they're usually the most important thing that happens in every experiencer's life. But so I'm not telling you these people actually came close to dying, or our guest today did, but I am telling you that what they've been through is extraordinary. We have much to learn from it. Among the things I love about NDEs is that they're so well documented. There have been so many of them. They're one of the 2 or 3 most likely ways that we're at last going to be able to open the minds of the scientific community and begin to truly get them to investigate the greater reality. And frankly, they're the most common and biggest spiritually transformative experience that people have. So they're very important. Now, when I first heard from our guest today, Robert Kopecky, who has had 3 near-death experiences, I said to him, I'm uneasy about doing near-death experiences. And he said, no, we're going to talk about spiritual stuff. So he really rang my chimes with that. Robert's new book is How to Get to Heaven Without Really Dying. And welcome, Robert. I'm thrilled that you're here.
Thank you, Roberta. It's so nice to be back and talk to you again.
So tell us a little bit about your history, just a little, so people will know who it is that we're visiting with.
Oh, sure. First off, I'd just like to say that hearing your intro, I'm just right on the same page with you because I did have 3 near-death experiences, and obviously I didn't die, right? They were only near death.
Right.
My history is that I had a rather, as you might imagine, a rather tumultuous history, that included these 3 very different NDEs. But I grew up in a kind of a difficult household and had a hard childhood and hit the road early and did a lot of jobs. I had a lot of lives, so to speak, until I settled into my career as an illustrator and art director and animation designer, which I've done most of my life for a variety of, famous places, the New York Times and Cartoon Network and PBS Kids and stuff like that. But it wasn't until I had this kind of dark night of the soul about 15 or 16 years ago where the cumulative effects of my near-death experiences and, life in general sort of caught up with me. And I had a kind of an ego death. I had a different, not a death, but an ego death to speak of, so to speak, that kind of allowed me to enter into a whole new part of my life. And I became a meditator and a vegetarian, and I started studying all kinds of philosophy and psychology and physics and scripture And I ended up sitting on a rock by the upper Delaware River for many years and having this calling to write about it. And so I put that down into a rather fast manuscript and sent it to somebody who liked it, who sent me to a larger publisher, and that became my first book, which was How to Survive Life and Death, that I spoke to you about a couple years ago, I think.
Okay, well, so you were how old when you started to sort of, as you have this, what you call the dark night of the soul? Wait, when did this happen to you?
It happened right around 9/11. I was in New York City for 9/11, and I had kind of I had a moment, that a lot of people have, where everything around me, all these kinds of structures of material life that I had allowed to define myself completely, sort of fell apart in many ways. The nature of my career ended, and I had my second marriage had ended not long after or before that, and that was really the point at which I had a kind of a transformative shift. Each near-death experience hadn't done that for me by itself. They contributed to it, but it was really at that moment
how old
about.
Were you? I mean, because people listening are going to compare your experience with their lives. And how old were you when all of this happened?
I was 45.
Okay, so that's good. You were grown up, but you were not that old. So that's a good time. I didn't really get serious about all of this till I was retirement age. So you're way ahead of me, I have to say. Let's talk briefly about your 3 near-death experiences.
Sure, they're all typical. Yeah.
How old were you when each happened? And we can go into them in more detail later, but let's talk quickly about what they were.
The first one, I was in my mid-20s, and I was living a successful life as an illustrator in Los Angeles. All 3 of them are typical motifs. They're classic motifs. And the first one was an out-of-body experience where I was in a single-car accident, and that instantly, upon impact, found myself at the height of the telephone pole that the car had run into, looking down on the scene, able to look over into different parts of this unknown neighborhood to me and see people coming out. And I witnessed my body being put into an ambulance and tried to communicate with people ineffectively, and then was moved on by a spirit that was accompanying me that I never really encountered directly, but who shepherded me into this kind of a pastoral setting where I underwent a kind of an interview of sorts. The absolute details of which I don't really remember precisely, but a lot of important things were hashed out. And I awoke about 20 hours later back into this world in a hospital.
So were you worried? Gee, if I could look at my body, I must be dead. Did you have any fears like that?
No, because, I had that one thing that's typical to all of us and that I talk about as being heaven in the new book, is this experience of being enfolded into a field of divine consciousness, this kind of illuminative matrix of loving intelligence, God, so to speak.
Right.
And so I knew that I was not the same as I had been, and that I was looking at my material state down there, and that I wasn't it. That I was this diaphanous, effervescent kind of energy being that didn't have real distinct boundaries anymore and felt at one with everything.
Well, that's a happy feeling, but that is typical, as you say, of NDEs. I think one reason why people so often think that must have been death is that it feels so different from normal life. Here we've got all these physical experiences and we don't know much, and we're stressed by everything from the mortgage payment to the fact that, someone was cranky to us this morning. But there's no stress. It's like it's all gone. So no wonder it feels like heaven.
Right, and this is one of my sections of my book on how to get to heaven without really dying. The second part of that being the most important is that spiritual perspective I got from that experience that enables me to witness, the form of being human and the difficulties that it presents for us, and people's kind of authentic spirits trying to express themselves through the difficult nature of human life, that we all experience here.
So, all right, and the next one, and how old were you then?
I was in my mid-20s.
Okay, well then when was the next one? Because this didn't change you much. It just became an arrow in your quiver, kind of.
Yeah, it didn't, because I did not realize that there was any kind of community. This was in the early 80s that happened, and I wasn't aware of any kind of community of NDE experiencers, and when I told people about it, they looked at me funny, and so I just moved back in.
No, you're right. A lot of people were probably having NDEs then. One of the things we think, because NDEs do appear throughout history, just briefly, everyone, but there suddenly is an explosion of them in the 60s, and we think it's because so many more people were close to the threshold and brought back, which was something that was much less likely, although it could happen earlier. I mean, they truly are near-death experiences in that many people who have them have bodies and minds sufficiently stressed that unless they're brought back, they will complete the transition. But, like you, 3 is a lot. I think that's you're kind of being piggy about that, having 3 of them. But in fact, yeah, well, they do tend to come when there's some traumatic thing that has happened or when death is possible. When we come back, we're going to learn more about Robert's other 2 near-death experiences, and then we're going to talk about what they are, how they feel, because people talk about their NDEs all the time, but a lot of people wonder just how would it feel to have that happen to you. This is Roberta Grimes, Seek Reality. We'll be right back.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
You have heard of the X-Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com.
Welcome back to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes and Robert Kopecky, who is talking to us about near-death experiences in a very productive and positive way. His book is great, by the way, and it's good for people who are doing with near-death experiences what I hope people will do, which is to use them to grow spiritually. And we were up to his second NDE. Robert, tell us a little about that. How old were you and what happened?
I was in my early 30s at that time, and I had been kind of knocked out of my tracks by a failed marriage and the death of an aunt who was very close to me. I was at her bedside. I ran off to New York City, and I lived a pretty self-destructive lifestyle. And as a result of it, all of these bad effects kind of cascaded in on me. I ended up one evening falling out on the floor of my apartment, so to speak, and I became paralyzed from the neck down. I couldn't move at all. I felt as though the life were draining out of me completely.
How old were you? You were like in the middle of the best part of your life, right? I mean, that's...
Yeah, I should have been, but I think that possibly from not having kind of dealt with the first NDE and the what it meant to me in my life, and I had gone on suppressing all of this kind of stuff, and I ended up in this place where I found myself on the floor, and the room filled in with a brilliant white cloud completely.
Really?
And I again was accompanied by somebody, it's my guardian angel is who I think of it now as being, who directed me to look into the center of this cloud, and a kind of screen opened up where I had this sort of life review where I was shown scenes from my life, but it was not the highlight reel. You know, these were these episodes, kind of like episodes of time, boxes of time. They were something that I could actually take part in more than just watch like a movie. And there were 5 or 6 of these instances where I had not been present in my life in a way that could have been very instructive for me when I had made bad decisions.
For example, so the bad decisions, were there cases where you were not kind, or where somebody...
Yes.
Okay, and did you experience how other people felt during that, or was it really just from your perspective?
It was mostly from my perspective, but I got to say that I did experience a deeper empathy towards the people in the scenes, so that I came to realize that in each and every moment we have this effect. You know, we can have this kind of effect in our life, and that we're always living in this eternal moment when all the important things happen to us. So I did experience the way people felt in those scenes.
Oh my goodness! All right, so did it then just pass, or did they give you any kind of conclusion? Was this just to show you these scenes?
Yeah, I believe it was just to show me that, and it gave me what I call the gift of presence, this understanding that we live in this eternal moment all the time, no matter what part of life we're in, even afterlife. We're in this moment of whatever reality we're existing in, you know?
Right.
But the woman that I was with at the time was shouting and crying because of my condition, and that kind of penetrated into my experience, and the blood kind of started to course in my body again, and the whole scene receded. The cloud cleared out, and about an hour later, so I could get back up on my feet again.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. Okay. Well, that's big. And did that transform your life at all? Did it affect your life?
It did. You know, once again, I did not realize or didn't think about looking for a community of supportive people who had those experiences too. My egoic life kind of entered back in, and I ended up leaving that relationship and heading back out west, moving back out west where I come from originally, from New York City. And that's where I had my third near-death experience then, a few years later.
How old were you then?
I was about 40 in my
okay.
my third near-death experience.
So tell us what happened.
In that one, I had just come from New York City to a small town in Arizona, and I was getting engaged. I was going to get married, and I was enjoying a Super Bowl Sunday with some friends in this small town, and my fiancée was at home baking. And after the game, I went out to call her, and I was assaulted by a big roughneck, what we'd call skinheads at that time.
Oh my goodness.
These big, tough, kind of neo-Nazi-like kids. This one assaulted me while I was on a payphone, and I talked him down and got back on the phone with my fiancée, and then he came back and assaulted me more violently. And then I made a terrible mistake, which was that I punched the guy. And he went down and out, and the people around me applauded because they had seen the whole thing. It was as though I'd gotten confirmation from the crowd. But when I left, I didn't know there was a group of these skinheads who drove up alongside of me and knocked me in the back of the head with maybe a tire iron or something like that, and then stomped and kicked my unconscious body for the worst part of an hour. In which
Are you
case,
kidding? That's terrible. How did you survive that?
I don't know exactly, but I did. What happened to me was interesting, too, because it was a completely different kind of near-death experience. It was one that was a bit more tethered to this reality. In other words, I didn't lose complete realization of this kind of violence happening kind of out there somewhere, but I was contained in this, once again, this warm, loving kind of situation or extra dimension, so to speak. They felt kind of a terrestrial or almost like inside of a body, almost womb-like.
Yes.
And there were entities around me who were telling me that I needed to go back, that I had not done things right, and that there was something I still needed to do. And they basically, as I recall it, picked me up and pushed me through a kind of a membrane. And when I opened my eyes, I was on my back on the street in this Arizona town, and there was an EMT guy above me who said, "He's back." And that whole thing lasted about 2.5 hours or so.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, how badly were you hurt? I mean, were you have broken bones and things?
That was my worst death, so to speak. If you're going to rate them like that. But yes, I did have broken bones, and I required reconstructive surgery and all kinds of bad stuff like that.
Oh,
it took me quite a while to recover from it. But from that, I got what I call in the book the gift of purpose, which is this extra-dimensional reality that we are here to fulfill a spiritual evolution of our own and of our own collectively too.
That's extraordinary. See, this is very important to everyone. We all have primary spirit guides. They sign up with us before we're born. They help us plan that life, and they will. Let's just say they'll come into our lives when they need to. Yours have certainly been rather dramatic in how they've come into your lives, but everybody, you all have someone like that in your life too. Many of us have more than one primary, secondary guides for specific purposes. When you take up piano lessons or whatever, somebody will join you to help you with whatever is going on in your life. Knowing that that's true is immensely comforting. They never will leave us. Doesn't matter how much you think maybe you're not worthy of having somebody like that in your life. We all have someone, just as Robert does. But his great luck is he gets to really know these people. That's wonderful. Was it the same beings at each time, or did you have any sense of individual beings?
Well, I never really was able to focus on who they were exactly. But a couple of years after I went through this kind of ego death that I was mentioning to you, when my life turned around, I had a Reiki session where I experienced a kind of an astral travel to a place where I met who I consider my guardian angel. And she was introduced to me by the aunt who had died, whose bedside I was at. And it was quite an extraordinary extra-dimensional experience in itself that gave me this knowledge that you're describing, that I am never alone and that I'm always fully supported and encouraged by my guides.
Everyone listening, if you wish you could be in touch with your guides, you can. All you need to do is speak to them aloud before you're going to sleep. Say, I know you're there. I know we're probably going to be meeting tonight. Please let me remember something from that meeting. Tell me what your name is or whatever you think I should know. How should I refer to you? And if you're persistent, because this for a month you could do this and you won't get an answer. But if you're persistent, you'll find you'll wake up in the morning and there'll be something in your mind that you'll pick right out. Just always pay attention to what's going on in your mind when you wake up. And the more you sort of solidify this connection, the more easy and helpful it's going to be in your life. Because whatever question you have, if they think it would help you to know the answer to the question, they will give it to you. And this is how I worked with my primary guide for most of my life, and it worked very well. So, all right, what was the physics like? Now, it was different, of course, for each of these because they were from different levels of your own consciousness. Did you have a sense of a timeless, spaceless feel? Did you have a sense of being somewhere else, even though you were right there?
Yes, I did. I definitely had a sense of these being extra-dimensional experiences, so to speak. They were not Earth-like whatsoever. Even the nature of the memories are somewhat different, And what I talk about in the book is aligning yourself with these kinds of pathways to that experience, because it was very important for me to become a meditator. That's really, in large part, how I stay in touch with my spirit guides now. But going inward in that respect opens up the doors to the kind of extra-dimensional experience I had in each of these three cases.
When we come back, we're going to talk about what for me is the point of all of this, which is how we can use it to develop spiritually. Roberta Grimes, Seek Reality. We'll be right back.
From our broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, to the world and beyond, you're watching the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
AVS Media Demo.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
Welcome back to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes and Robert Kopecky. We're talking about his book, which is How to Get to Heaven Without Really Dying, I think. I don't have it right in front of me. Is that right?
That's right.
That's
Yep.
it. See, I have it memorized.
Without really dying. That's the important
without
part.
really dying. But the thing is, we think, I thought when I first saw it, that, Robert, that you were saying, I too have been dead and come back to life, but you weren't at all. One of the things he does is to quote the Gospel of Thomas. But in fact, the Gospel of Thomas is where this appears, but it appears in the Bible too. The kingdom of heaven is spread across the earth, but men don't have eyes to see it. That's Thomas. And Jesus tells us repeatedly in the Gospels that the kingdom of God is all around us. The kingdom of God is within us. The kingdom of God is right where we are. And that's the kingdom of God that Robert is talking about. Because he was a fairly stubborn guy. I mean, we have to sort of say that frankly, Robert. He wasn't... Things that would rock other people's worlds, he didn't get in his way. But
hard-headed.
Yes,
right?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Fortunately.
But eventually, there was a breakthrough when he was in his late 40s or somewhere in your mid-40s, and he suddenly realized that there was a whole area of life that he had now been shown for 3 times. He'd been shown it, and he had to start to explore it. We all are in the same position every day of our lives. There is all of this going around us that we are not paying attention to, but it is the whole purpose why we're here. We plan a life. We come here as like it's a spiritual gym. We come here, we want to get on these machines and learn and grow spiritually, strengthen our spiritual muscles. So what we're going to talk about now is he's coming at this from a very different experience. I have to say, Robert, frankly, I don't meditate. My husband's been meditating for, 40 years. I don't meditate. I don't want to do it. I don't have the time. I'm not a meditator. So I come at spiritual growth from a very different way, but I'm very idiosyncratic. Most people come at it from Robert's perspective. So talk to us about meditation, how you began to do it and how it helped you.
Well, I think I was just called upon. I had this experience where I was given the opportunity to buy a small house on the upper Delaware River, which is a wild and scenic national park river. It's about 2.5 hours out of New York City where I live. And I met my wife, my third and ultimate wife, I hope. And we started going up there very, very regularly. And there was a rock by the river that had my name on it. And I just began sitting there very early in the mornings. And after which I started to have this calling to write. And this kind of experience of heaven that I had in those moments of deep meditation, I knew were the same kind of experiences that I had had in these 3 different near-death experiences. Not the details, because the details of it were all kind of karmically fashioned by where I was in my life, so to speak. But the things that each of my experiences and the experiences of so many other people I've heard now had in common arose within me while I was meditating, that being enfolded into this expansive matrix of loving intelligence and having a transcendent sense of complete connectedness with everything and this kind of understanding of my purpose,
Well, how did you get started? Did you read something about meditating? Were you, how did you get started meditating? Was it just you were sitting there and you kind of fell into a trance? What happened?
Well, it went way back for me because as a kid having a hard time growing up, I became a martial artist, which was kind of, I think, my spirit guide's way of putting me in a safe place. And I came under the influence of a teacher who was a very learned fellow, knew a lot about Eastern practices, and had me meditating at that time. It did a lot of good for me when I was 15 or 16 years old. And then the course of all this insanity happened in my life, and it wasn't until I was in my 40s again that I returned to it, and it worked for me in a way that it never had when I'd tried it in the intervening years.
To me, what they call the monkey mind is always going too much. There always are thoughts that come into your mind, and I just get very impatient with them. So, how do you quell the monkey mind?
Well, that's really one of the great things that meditation works for, because when one sits in meditation and becomes an observer, and I write about this in the book, this principle that the Hindus have of sakshi, of being a compassionate, neutral witness to life in general. When one sits in meditation and starts to hear that demanding voice in our head, what you call the monkey mind, or what's often called the ego mind, that's, telling us what to do and what we have to worry about, and, it's worried that there's a saber-toothed tiger behind the bush that's about to jump out and eat you. But that hasn't been the case for a long, long time, It's creating lots of false fears that we don't really need to allow to define our lives. And in sitting in meditation, one can become an objective witness to that. And when you objectively...
Most people seem to say, who are expert meditators, that if you fight the thoughts, they actually get worse. So just let them drift in and drift out.
Right.
That's what many say, and then they start coming less and less as you go deeper.
Well, you let them play through, Yes, you let them play through, so to speak, and then you start to notice that there's a place within you that isn't that, and you begin to identify yourself with that area of serene calm, the still small voice, as the Quakers call it, and you can witness that kind of crazy voice going on, and pretty soon you just don't have to pay attention to it anymore.
So yeah, and that's what others say too. So I believe that is true. So how often do you meditate? How long do you meditate? How do you find the time to meditate?
Well, when it's warm and sunny here in the Northeast, I meditate almost every day. When it's cold, I do it about 2 or 3 times a week in the wintertime, because I'm not in nature. I love to meditate in nature. But I find that it's one of those things that one can make the time for because of how much it enhances the quality of your life. I'm more effective at everything else I do when I meditate for a little while in the morning.
So, but many people who have a 9-to-5 job are saying, "Oh, how would I ever do that?" How long do you meditate? Like 20? My husband does 20 minutes every day. Do you do 20 minutes or longer?
On weekdays it's like 20 minutes to a half hour. For the 6 or 7 years leading up to the publication of the first book, when a lot of things really turned around for me, I was meditating 3 or 4 days a week for about 2 hours a day.
Wow. Because most people
so thousands of hours.
Yes, but most people who are in the midst of life can't do that. My husband, who has been doing this, as I say, for literally almost 40 years, meditates routinely before lunch for 20 minutes. Somehow he knows when 20 minutes are over and he just comes out of it. I think many people, for him, that's been enough. It has really, I remember him from before. He is a different person and a much better person to himself and others because he does this. So if people who are listening to us and saying, well, for Pete's sake, you guys, you have all the time in the world. I don't have any time. I've got a husband. I've got a wife. I've got children. 20 minutes will do it. And if you do it every day, it really seems to become something that just becomes part of your life, and you can do it on your lunch hour. You have to do it with an empty stomach. Apparently, it's a problem if you can give yourself indigestion if you've eaten. So do it before lunch. Try it before lunch.
Yeah, I think that as long as you have a conscious contact with whatever, with God or with your angel guides, your spirit guides, as long as you just get into that space for a little while, I think you're good. In the book, it's really about aligning you with what these heavenly sensations are that are common to all these experiences. Meditation is only part of it, because I have in the first part, in the perspective part, I have actions that you can take that kind of amount to the same sort of thing in a way without having to interrupt your busy schedule.
And the point of this, of course, is to raise your spiritual vibration. You have come to Earth. Nearly everybody has this as your life purpose, learning to raise your spiritual vibration. So what Robert is doing really is at the core of what each of us needs to be doing now. And as I've told you I do it differently, and what I do works as well. But what's interesting to me about his book, actually a number of things are, I really recommend it highly. What's interesting to me is he's at the same place, learning to love perfectly, learning to forgive completely, learning to put aside and do away with all of the things about this life that we think are important, because they're not important at all. And when you do that, you can raise your spiritual vibration. I think meditating does help, Robert. I mean, I'm not fighting you on that. I think it does. It's just that we're all on different voyages, and his voyage, actually, your voyage may help a lot of people, because for me, it's a much more mechanical thing. I'll be talking in another couple or 3 weeks about how I do it. So I will try to remember to remind you about how Robert does it. You may find that some combination is what you all need to do. We have, to me, the point of all of this is for us to come to a shared understanding of who and what we are. Because when we have that, all of the differences in religion go away. The politics doesn't matter a fig. We rise above it all. And don't you find that it makes you happy?
Oh, yeah. The goal is to transcend the delusion of separateness. It's so that we realize that we're always one in God. Yes. And in many ways, we are the same person, the same divine consciousness being expressed through these different forms that we're each in.
That we are, this illusion of separation. And I should just say, too, I'm sure you mean, when you say God, you don't mean the cranky guy with the thunderbolts. What you mean is eternal mind, of which all our minds are a part, and eternal mind is all that exists. And it's mind, God, but
I call it divine consciousness.
When we come back, we're going to finish this up talking about what we've learned. Roberta Grimes, Seek Reality.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
The new nonfiction book, Razor of Madness, is similar to cult movies like Clockwork Orange, Dragon's Tattoo, or The Other Side of Hell. Wayne Morin Jr. and Thomas Lee Howe will expose widespread and systematic deficiencies in this thought-provoking tell-all novel. Mind control rages among scholars in law schools. Human rights are ignored while thought reform and mental manipulation are accepted practices used as behavior modification. Dr. Louis Jolyon West comes to mind. Media and public scrutiny shows that United States mental hospitals are in fact destructive murder industries. Razor of Madness expose novel details this epidemic through an in-depth professional and personal investigation. For decades, there has been a revolving door policy that still releases killers and pedophiles back into society. The maestro of mind control continues to haunt America to this very day. Razor of Madness is available in paperback or as a downloadable ebook at Amazon.com.
I'm William S. Peckham. If you enjoy a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love my novel, From Out of the Woodwork. It's the story of a young Toronto contractor, Sean Kennedy, who buys derelict homes, guts them, and turns them into multifamily dwellings. Slums just waiting to happen. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, the house fights back. former owners unexpectedly come out of the woodwork as he starts the destruction. The apparitions come to him when he touches old books, reads hidden letters, rummages through old boxes, finds a locket, or reads a discovered manuscript of a murder mystery. From Out of the Woodwork will take you from 1899 to the horror of the World Trade Center, September 11, 2001. Check out From Out of the Woodwork on my website, www.williamspeckham.com.
Welcome back to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes and Robert Kopecky. And what we're talking about, he's had 3 NDEs, and they were all different. I think he has had the most interesting set of NDEs I've ever heard of. But the point of them was to get his attention, and he says hard-headed, took a lot to get his attention, but once his attention was obtained by his guides, he began to grow spiritually, and he used techniques very different from the ones I use, but they get you to the same place. And I think that's what I'd like to sort of talk about a little bit, Robert. What do you notice is different about your life as you've gotten deeper and deeper into spiritual growth?
Well, the 3 near-death experiences all had an instructive component to them, too. That's something that was very consistent. And so there were these elements of guidance or of teaching or of having to adjust my life in ways that aligned me with this kind of heavenly experience here or later or whenever. And so I'm able to look at people with this kind of perspective that I got from the out-of-body experience that allows me to see their spirit kind of struggling through the forms of their life. Life is not easy for anybody, you know?
No, that's right.
And then the second experience gave me this gift of presence where I'm able to realize that everything is happening right within this moment, in the eternal now, or in the eternal moment, when all of our choices and all of the important things are being shown to us, synchronicities and all of that kind of thing. So I'm able to be more present for people, I think, in my life. And then I have this sense of purpose. You know, I apparently was sent back here to talk about this and to help people with their understanding of life and death, some of their questions, and to show up for life, whether I'm the star of a big movie or if I'm just helping somebody I love. My purpose is clear to me when I'm leading a spiritual life.
So this helps you to feel as if helps you feel peaceful. It helps you feel happy as your vibration raises. Don't you find it also helps you to see other people differently, empathize much more than you ever did before?
Absolutely. Yeah, I call that looking at people with angel eyes, where you can just experience their spirit struggling through the forms of their life, what their experiences might have been, their traumas or victories or, their upbringing, their genes, all of that kind of thing. And, I talk about the actions that you can take to align you to this kind of heavenly experience, which exist in kindness, honesty, humility, forgiveness, compassion, and service. And so those are actual actions you can bring into your life that are, everybody does all of that in heaven, right? That's consistent. That's consistent in heaven.
But now we're talking with someone who tried to ignore these experiences. You weren't really religious before either, were you?
Not at all, no.
Yeah, right. So let's just say we're basically someone who was very macho, going through life in a very macho way, and but got tapped on the shoulder by spirit and called to do what we would think of as religious, which it's not, nothing to do with religion, but certainly not a conventional way of looking at the world. But it's empowering to do this. If you decide now it's the time for you to start to really grow spiritually, and his book would be a great place to go, How to Get to Heaven Without Really Dying. Very easy to understand book from someone who has lived the experience. So I can recommend it strongly, but however you begin to do it, to begin to put your spiritual growth first in your life, I guarantee you, is the one thing that is going to make you feel very glad when you finally do graduate, because that's why you came. And the first thing many people do when they get there is hit their foreheads and say, what was I thinking? I tried to get all this money. I tried to get all this power. I stepped on people's faces, and it got me nowhere. So the kind of transformation you have had, I think, is a great example for all of us. And I'm just glad it happened to you as early as it did in life, because you have wonderful teaching now to be done.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, it's a completely different definition of success than what we do that enables our spiritual evolution. It gives us a life that is transcendent in nature. It's like living in heaven a lot of the time. So that's, for me, a lot of it too came from studying ancient texts, like the Bhagavad Gita or the Gospel of Thomas that we mentioned before. Yes. I have that in the presence section of the book, and the poetry of Rumi. And Coleman Barks gave me his translations, which I love. I'm very grateful for. And then in the last part of the book, I go into 20 tips for just living to align ourselves with the recreation of heaven on earth, which I think is a definite possibility that we can all pitch in together and recreate here.
One of the things that's important to understand, everyone, is that this is a kind of physics. It's a spiritual physics, that you don't have to believe something. It's not a religion at all. You don't have to do any religious practice. But what you're doing is working with your mind to raise your spiritual consciousness. And it is a physics. I'll be talking about this, as I say, in a few weeks. It's something which, as long as you do your part, you can get this kind of success in your own spiritual life. Everybody can. And there is no happiness like the happiness, as he's telling you, there's no happiness like the happiness of finally beginning to get this right. What do you want people most to take away from our conversation today?
Well, I think that's a pretty good message, that there's this kind of spiritual technology at work. There's this invisible machinery just underneath the surface of what you see. I like to call the field of love, because it's showing itself through all these different forms and relationships in our life. So removing the obstacles to the realization of love in your life, how you can bring more of it into the world and how you can enjoy more of it coming into you, I think that that's pretty critical. And that's a big part of living in heaven, so to speak.
Well, we'll have to talk about this again before long, because this more and more is where I'm coming to understand. This has been the point of my voyage, to coming to a place where I can begin to teach this as well. I'm so glad you've been with us. What's your website? How will people get in touch with you?
Well, there's www.robertkopecky.com, and then a lot of people read my blog, which is robertkopecky.blogspot.com. And I'm on Facebook and Twitter and all of that stuff, too. You can look me up there.
And you spell his name Kopecky, just as it sounds. Well, thank you so much. Please consider yourself hugged, and I hope we can do this again soon.
Thank you, Roberta. Much love. Many blessings.
So this has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes, as you all know, and I'm very glad you could join us today, because this is something that is so important to me. Next week, our guest will be Louise Herman. This will be our second time joining us on Seek Reality. I'm really looking forward to our visit. Louise is an extraordinary and very gifted Australian medium, and she is one of the most spiritually dedicated people I've ever met. She's one of the few people I've ever interviewed who has blown my mind. By day, she works full-time as a software engineer, and by night she is, according to the title of her first book, dedicated to the afterlife, and boy, is she. We had her on here 18 months ago, and I just have to find out what she's up to now. This week, our guest has been Robert Kopecky, and his new book is called How to Get to Heaven Without Really Dying, Wisdom from a Near-Death Survivor. The title is cute, but it more to the point. The book is about exactly what I think is the most important thing for all of us to be looking at now, which is why are we here, and how do we make the most of our time here to raise our spiritual vibration as much as possible. We're here for a short time, right? And eternity is a very long time, but it's hard to raise your vibration in the afterlife because there's nothing to push against. Robert, has had a lot to push against, but the beauty of it is that he has used that experience in this gym, which we call life, this spiritual gym. He has used that experience to really better his life, and therefore now be able to better everyone's life as well. Again, how to get to heaven without really dying. And he's a very interesting, thoughtful, hard-headed man who still has figured it all out. You're going to enjoy him. As you know, my nonfiction books are Liberating Jesus, My Thomas, The Fun of Dying, The Fun of Staying in Touch, The Fun of Growing Forever, The Fun of Living Together, and for young children, The Fun of Meeting Jesus. We'll be putting out a second picture book this year. You can order all of my books through bookstores or on Amazon.com, and they're available, except the child's book, as audiobooks as well. If you want to talk about any of my books, or if you want to talk about really anything at all, you can contact me through robertagrimes.com. I always answer emails. Just be sure you give me your correct email address, because if I write a long answer and then I send it to the address and it turns out to be the wrong address, it really gives me a bad day. You don't want to do that to me. But really, I answer all kinds of questions. The day will come probably when I can't do it anymore, but sometimes it takes me close to a week at this point to make sure I get to all of them, but I do. Past episodes of Seek Reality are available on webtalkradio.net, on iTunes, and through the Seek Reality app that you can find for free in the iTunes store. Earlier episodes are being rebroadcast about a year later by our wonderful, wonderful friends at Dream Vision 7 Radio. And if you're ever wondering where Seek Reality can be heard right now, just go to robertagrimes.com and click the radio tab. Meanwhile, please never forget that while we are in the midst of what seems to be a real material life, none of this is real. Our true eternal selves are far away and watching, trying to help us do the best that they can. We are all part of that one glorious being, that great mind, which is all that exists in this perfect love. This has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Please enjoy and make the most of this coming week in our one reality, knowing that you, in particular, are a powerful, eternal being, and you are infinitely loved.
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Are you or is someone you know struggling with addictions, depression, anxiety, relationships, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, grief, success, and prosperity? Do you know that your subconscious belief plays a big role in the outcome of your hard work? We can help you permanently change the beliefs that may be the reason for your struggles and failures. We care about getting you the return on your investment and the results you are looking for. We can help you be free of the limitations of your past and in realizing your highest potential. We work with people by phone and Skype. For more information, visit us at www.ritasoman.com. That's www.ritasoman.com. Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464.